Okay, so in the last tutorial, this bouncing ball didn't exist. You've created your own bouncing ball, just as I've done here, and essentially what you've got is keyframes that allow the ball to travel down and then come back up, and what you've been able to manipulate is the position and the scale. Okay, so we're just going to play around with these things and see what we can do to advance the skills that you've already picked up already. Okay. Now, just to remind you that these skills they are used in Adobe After Effects using keyframes and animation via tweening, but also Premiere Pro uses it, Adobe Animate uses it, that you'll go on to use, lots of other things use it. Okay, so we're going to stick in with After Effects for now and see some more advanced options that we can do. Okay, alright then, so one thing would be when we play this back, the motion isn't necessarily realistic. What I'm going to do is I'm going to select all of it and I'm going to drag it along just to the start, so it actually starts at 0 frames. Okay, that'll be the first thing we do. Also, because you want to play things back often, I'm going to take the work area end and drag it all the way down to the start of the timeline, just so that it encompasses the area in which we are working in, the work area. Okay, so this work area specifically will be what is rendered or what is exported as a video. So at the moment it's set to 2 seconds and 15 frames in. Okay, so just bear that in mind. It's always good to do that. Now if I was to go into my preview area and press play, it's just going to repeat the work area. So you can kind of look at it and go, I'm seeing this repeated back. I don't necessarily think it's realistic. Yeah. So what we're going to do is we're going to speed up, first of all, how it hits the floor. Okay. So we're going to move all of these so that they are closer to our first frame. Okay. So a bouncing ball will always travel faster down than it will do up. That's just basic physics. Yeah. So one thing you can do with the ball as it rises up is to actually slow it on approach to, you know, the height that it will first come to, because it's going to slow gradually. It's not going to just be slow as it is at this point in time. So what we're going to do is we're going to add a keyframe at this point in time here. Now, this hasn't actually added any other animation or anything like that. All that's done is added a keyframe. No position has been changed or anything like that. But if I drag this one out, that will extend the distance between these two keyframes. And so that will have an effect on our timeline. So if I play that back, it slows down as it approaches the top there. Okay? Now, past that point in time, what else can we do? So let's have a play of that very quickly. Are you happy with that? I'm not necessarily 100% happy with that. We could perhaps do something like that. Yeah. Possibly. Or if I just get rid of that one, add another keyframe and try that one more time. Or maybe add another one with a shorter distance and drag that out. Okay, that's a little bit better. I obviously don't have a lot of time to play around with this. One thing that you need to consider is that a ball does not just bounce once, it bounces multiple times. And what we're going to do is we're going to play around with that same copy and paste feature and see what we can do. Okay, so let's select all of these keyframes apart from this first keyframe. Now, the reason is because this keyframe is simply repeated here. So I don't necessarily need to have it twice in a sequence. Okay, what I'm going to do is I'm going to copy all these frames and I'm going to paste them just beyond. Essentially, that's a similar distance as to there. We'll try that. We can actually count that down. Zoom in. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. Let's do it to 9. So here it's going to be 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. I understand that might not be 100% accurate, but I don't really care. So Command C. Now we've got the marker at the place where the first keyframe is going to come in. We press Command V. There we go. Okay, let's test that, see if that works how we want it to. Brilliant, it does. Now that I've repeated that, I've realized now that I could probably want some distance to be traveled again. So I'm going to take this keyframe and press and put that there. Okay, I'm going to extend this all out just a little bit. We'll see what happens. Okay, there we go. The reason being adding this one again is because we've added a slow to approach keyframe. So essentially, you know, we want to mirror that on the way down because it doesn't just automatically, like, you know, fall at a similar speed as it once did. It's almost like turning a corner, but, you know, in the sky, I guess. Okay, all right. So that's that aspect, and you could continue that process on as much as you wanted. Okay, so that's something to take into account. All right then, so another thing that I'd like you to try is to add some motion blur. Okay, so these transformation keyframes, they exist on their own separate lines and everything like that. You can get rid of these lines and you can still see some indicator of the keyframes still existing. I believe these are just the position keyframes, but no, they're actually not only the position keyframes, but they're all of the keyframes, all of the transformation keyframes that you add in there. Okay, you will have your own effects panel. We can see effects here at this point in time, a long list of different effects. What I want you to try is a blur, and specifically I want you to try a directional blur. I'm going to grab this one, I'm going to drag this to the shape layer. Okay, now you can see that another section has been added here, the effects section, and in that you have the directional blur section as well. Okay, so I'm just going to open this up again. I'm going to look at what we've got here. So the directional blur is essentially like motion blur. So if we were to experiment with this very quickly without adding any keyframes or anything like that, let's increase the blur length. Okay, click off there. You can see what it's done with the ball there. Okay, I can obviously change the direction based on where the direction of movement is taking place. That's essentially why it's called a directional blur. Luckily, it's exactly where I want it to be. So I'm just going to leave it as it is there, but I'm going to be playing around with the blur length. Okay, when the ball is in motion, it is going to have blur, but when it stops, at least some of that blur is going to be gone, be taken away. Okay, so I'm going to put my first keyframe down as the blur length, as it is at that point in time, 50. Remember, I changed that. So I'm just going to click that stopwatch. I can look at it there, but I can also play around with it there. I'm just going to play around with it just at the bottom of the timeline. Okay, now it hits the floor there. So it's at that point in time that I'm going to want to bring the blur right down. I've got it quite high at this point in time. Bring it right down to about 10. There's always going to be some movement. Okay, there's an element of realism there coming through because we've got that movement. Okay, and the more you play around with these techniques, the more you're going to be able to, you know, produce things that have a high level of movement. Okay. So as it rises back up, I'm going to increase the blur length. Now there's no right or wrong way of doing this, it's entirely up to you. Okay, as it reaches the top, I'm then going to change the blur length again. I'm going to bring it further down, because this is almost the slowest it's ever been. Okay, let's play around with that. See what that looks like. So again, I have to quickly increase the level of blur because it increases speed at this point in time. So an indicator is this keyframe here. So I'm going to take this original keyframe, Command C. Ooh. Okay, sorry, wrong button I pressed. Command C, I'll try that. Command V. Yeah. So copy and paste. Sorry about that, I just pressed the wrong button there. And then I can take all of this data and just copy that over at the correct place because we've already got the information that we need. We've already played around with that. And it's just a matter of tweaking it if need be. But it should be fine as it is. Okay, and then the final one was this one, Command C. Let's copy that and bring that back to about there. Command V. Let's play that back. There you go. You can definitely see, particularly in the middle there, I do specifically like it in the middle there, that's very nice, that transition from an extended blur from quite a short blur in that area there. Okay? So, what we've done now is we've repeated frames, we've repeated the sequence somewhat, and we've also added some effects. Okay, there are plenty of effects to play around with. As a stretch and challenge task, I would like you to think about the ways in which you can use the skills that you've shown here further. Okay, so experiment with different effects. There's literally loads to choose from, but also different movement options as well. Try and go with realism, just so that we've all got something that we can aim for. Okay, now that you've finished the second video, I'd like you to then, again, get some feedback from your tutor before you continue, okay? Because he's going to want you to export this just so that you can use it in your journals and stuff, okay? Thank you very much.